الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة رافعة إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما وأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين في سدر مخضود وطلح منضود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم لا بارد ولا كريم إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين وكانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم وكانوا يقولون أئذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمبعوثون أو آباؤنا الأولون قل إن
Inshallah, we're going to start tonight's program with Quran from Brother Ali Abbas. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا إنا أعتدنا للكافرين سلاسل وأغلالا وسعيرا إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا إنا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا فوقاهم الله شر ذلك اليوم ولقاهم نضرة وسرورا وجزاهم بما صبروا جنة وحريرا صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Inshallah, next we're going to have Brother Mahdi Dardashtian come up and recite some poetry. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا رحمن يا رحيم السلام عليك يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا. Every year comes a time when bells of grace begin to chime, when our faults and our deeds become one and start to rhyme. Ya Ramadan, Ya Ramadan, Ya Ramadan, Ya Ramadan. My heart you cleanse and then refine in the eyes of God. You make me shine, O Ramadan. We welcome you, O feast of God. We welcome you, Ya Ramadan, Ya Ramadan, Ya Ramadan, O Ramadan. You teach me love and self-control. You make me rise, you make me whole. Your nights of power, I like the rain that wash away my soul and pain. O Ramadan, we welcome you, O feast of God. We welcome you, O Ramadan, O Ramadan, Ya Ramadan. Let's celebrate this blessed time and dedicate our precious time, the spreading peace and unity, so ways to please the Almighty. O Ramadan, O Ramadan, O Ramadan. وهو الكريم ابن الكريم وأخو الكريم وجد خير الأنام وهو الإمام ابن الإمام وأخو الإمام وهبه خير تمام وهو الحبيب ابن الحبيب وأخو الحبيب وأين شمس الضحى وهو التبيب ابن التبيب وأخو التبيب وبيته دار الشفاء وهو الأمير ابن الأمير وأخو الأمير وأمه خير النساء وهو الحسن ابن علي وأخو الحسين وأخته بنت الهدى Welcome our Imam Hassan with a beautiful applause. Do we clap here, Sheikh? No problem? Okay. This is a beautiful moment and joyous moment for all of us. So those who are busy with capturing videos, they're exempt, but the rest of you, raise your hand. This is same as doing Sinazani and Latmiya in the times of the Huzn and Sorrow of Ahlul Bayt. This, the way that we celebrate and we show our joy, we express it to our Imam of time. This itself is ibadah. So, welcome our Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam with a beautiful applause. No, you're not happy enough. Better and louder. One more time. My love is for Hassan, right behind him I'll stay, with or without regret. They can't keep me away. Angels are calling, the world rejoicing. The light of Mujtaba has now arrived. The sun is rising, Zahra is smiling. The chief of paradise has now arrived. Zahra is smiling. The sun is rising. The chief of paradise has now arrived. Sallallahu alayhi ya Mujtaba. Sallallahu alayka ya Mujtaba. Sallallahu alayka ya Mujtaba. Sallallahu عليك يا مجتبى صلى الله عليك يا مجتبى صلى الله عليك يا مجتبى صلى الله عليك يا مجتبى. Twice you gave all your wealth, leave a portion for me to serve you at your feet. Will make my life complete. A burning candle, a bright example. You are the light to shine upon us. Now fearless in battle, you did dismantle the enemy. So come and lead us now. Angels are calling, the world rejoicing. The light of Mujtaba has now arrived. The sun is rising, Zahra is smiling. The chief of paradise has now arrived. The chief of paradise has now arrived. Sallallahu alayka ya Mujtaba. Sallallahu alayka ya Mujtaba. Sallallahu صلى الله عليك يا مجتبى صلى الله عليك صلى الله عليك يا مجتبى. All of your followers act only on your call, whether you sit or stand, the flag will never fall. All of your followers act only on your call, whether you sit or stand, the flag will never fall. For us betrayal is the most shameful, never will we ever leave you, Hassan. We are so grateful that since the cradle we have been singing the name of Hassan. We are so grateful that since the cradle we have been singing the name of Hassan. A burning candle, a bright example, a burning candle, a bright example. You are the light, so shine upon us now, fearless in battle. You did dismantle the enemy, so come and lead us now. Angels are calling, the world rejoicing, the light of Mujtaba has now arrived. The sun is rising, Zahra is smiling, the chief of paradise has now arrived. The sun is rising, Zahra is smiling, the chief of paradise has now arrived. For us betrayal is the most shameful, never will we ever leave you, Hassan. We are so grateful that since cradle we have been singing the name of Hassan. We are so grateful that since the cradle we have been singing the name of Hassan. Sallallahu alayka ya Mujtaba sallallahu alayka ya Mujtaba. Help me with the loud salawat.
Jazakallah. Another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you for joining us tonight with Light of Guidance in conjunction with Zainabiyya Center for the birth of Imam Hassan. Inshallah, before we invite the Sheikh to the mimbar, we had just a couple quick announcements. The first is that we'd like to ask everybody if they could continue supporting us for these nights, and if anybody's interested, please let us know. Our next project is going to be, inshallah, the bathrooms in the back of the hall. So if anybody's interested in contributing to that, please let anyone else know. Also, for further announcements regarding the Nights of Qadr, inshallah, you're able to join the WhatsApp group so that you can get further details, and we'll have more of them this upcoming week. Inshallah, we also ask that everybody throughout the program wears their mask and continues with good social distancing. We thank everybody for their support and for all the attendance, both in person and online. Inshallah, with that, we'll allow Sheikh to come with Allah sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Wow.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرجهم وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to our lecture series, which this year has been titled The Transition. And this year, alhamdulillah, we've been discussing the barzakh, that first transition that we make into the next world. But before we jump into that, allow me also to extend my early congratulations on the birthday of Imam Hassan, alayhi salatu wasalam. Please send a salawat. Also, on behalf of the Hadi family, I also want to thank you, Sheikh Mahdi, for that wonderful poetry. One of the beauties of the poetry that the Sheikh recited is the idea that Imam Hassan, you can feel from that poetry, is a champion. Unfortunately, you and I, we've seen this. How many times do we feel that our Imam is madloom, even amongst his Shia, misunderstood, an excuse for people to not do their responsibility, as opposed to that way of welcoming him, which is the correct way. Remember that when he was born, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent angel Jibreel from heaven with a gift for our Prophet. It was God who named him Imam Hassan. And Imam Hassan والسلام, he resembled our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu both in his facial features and his akhlaq. One of the akhlaq of this family, and in particular this Imam, is generosity. Because sometimes we're not familiar with our Imam, or he hasn't been introduced as a champion to us, sometimes this Imam is not the Imam that people go to for their needs, unfortunately. Whereas, if you look at the seerah of the Imam, you'll see that Imam Hassan alayhi salam was generous even to his enemies, let alone his friends, the Shia, those who are his children, who the followers of the Shia are the children of the Ahlul Bayt. So I want to share one story about the generosity of the Imam, just so that inshallah, hearing this, repeating this, myself hearing it, will start to go to this Imam for our needs. So once, one of the enemies of the Imam, a man whose name you remember with hatred, his name was Marwan. This individual, he saw that the Imam had a beautiful mule. It was exceptional. And he wanted to somehow get his hands on that mule of the Imam. So he told one of his friends. And his friend said, well, if I get the mule for you, do you promise me to do 3 favors on behalf of me? He said, yeah, for sure, I'll do it. He said, so I have a way for you. He said, what happens is there'll be a gathering. And in that gathering, myself, I'm very talented. I'm going to start praising the Quraysh, mentioning their fada'il manaqib, but I'm not going to say anything about Imam Hassan. He's going to be present there. And then what you do is that you jump in and you say, well, what about Abu Muhammad? Say a few things about him. And then I'll take it from there. So the gathering happened. The Imam was there. And then everyone started talking about the fada'il of the Quraysh. This man starts praising the fada'il of Quraysh. But he doesn't say anything about Imam Hassan, who's sitting there, who's the grandson of the Prophet, the most notable of everyone. And he doesn't say anything about him. Marwan jumped in now. And he said, well, what about Abu Muhammad? You didn't say anything about him. You're mentioning Quraysh and their greatness and what they've done, but you've said nothing about him. And the man said, That's because I was talking about people. If I was talking about the Anbiya, then I would have mentioned Imam Hassan. So the gathering ended, the Imam left, and when the Imam left, this guy, he walked out with the Imam. So the Imam knows this guy's here for something, he wants something, but that doesn't stop the generosity of the Imam. He said, "What do you want?" And the guy was like, "Well, that mule you have," I immediately gave that. So you and I, we see if the enemies could get requests from the Imam, then what about those who are believers in the Imam, those who commemorate the Imam and introduce him in the right way to themselves, their children, and the world? Very important for us. Inshallah, we end with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, what we've been doing is to employ or to use a very special method of tarbiyah of the Ahlul Bayt. That's what we've been doing this year. The Ahlul Bayt, why tell us all of these details about the barzakh? Today, inshallah, we're going to talk about life in the barzakh. But why with the Ahlul Bayt, who are individuals who talk about the most important things, at the most needed things, the need of the time? Why spend this much time telling, explaining, teaching us all these details about life after death? The secret, brothers and sisters, is found in the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt. The idea is to use our time on the earth. When I mentioned some of the ways of living that the Ahlul Bayt are talking about, for us, inshallah, we're those Shia who are able to experience these joys. Again and again, you'll see those reminders from the Ahlul Bayt. Take advantage of now. This very beautiful hadith is from our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remember, some of us, people like myself, we're very generous with our most precious commodity, our life. Our life. We had the hadith from the beginning, the idea that we're nothing but a number of days, and each day that go, part of us is gone. But some people fritter their lives away instead of spending it doing service to Islam. And I'm not saying that Islam says don't enjoy yourself. I've been repeating that from the beginning, that Islam gives us the best of the life of this world, and then after that, the next. I'm not saying Islam says don't enjoy yourself. But could I do it with the right niyyah? So I'm enjoying each and every moment and getting closer to God. Listen to this hadith. The Prophet told Abu Dhar, Ya Abu Dhar, Abu Dhar, kun ala umrika ashah minka ala dirhamek wa dinarik. Be more stingy with your life, your most precious commodity, than you are with your dirham and dinar. People are very careful about their money, how I'm spending it. Will I make it to the end of the month? Where do I invest? Is this a time? But why the most precious commodity not to use it the correct way? So the discussion about the barzakh is to benefit now. So what we're going to do is remind ourselves very briefly of some of the things we've already covered with the life and the barzakh, and then inshallah we'll talk about a bit more of that. We're going to spend most of our time on the barzakh of the believers. Right? Inshallah, all of us, we're believers. Not as much time tonight will be on the barzakh of the kuffar. So remember, we said that after that initial trauma that the soul experiences when we enter into the next world, and the idea that even the other arwah, the other individuals, they're like, leave this person for a little while. Let them get adjusted to this new life. After that, the good times begin. So we learned that we're going to be in gardens in the barzakh in paradise. We're going to have magnificent rooms there. We'll get a chance to see one another there. We're going to have barzakhi bodies over there. When we say we have barzakhi bodies over there, those bodies are very different to the bodies that we have here. Yes, we learn from the ahadith that we'll recognize one another when we see one another. Of course, over there we'll be looking incredible, but you'll still be able to tell that this is such and such. But this body, the body which is latif, is one that actually allows us even to fly. Inshallah, will get us get to that later. We're going to be enjoying the food and drink over there. Remember this hadith we had from Imam Sadiq? He said, Arwahul mu'minin fi hujuratin fil jannah. The souls of the believers are in rooms, magnificent rooms in paradise. Ya'kuluna min ta'amiha. They're over there enjoying that wonderful food of paradise. Wa yashrabuna min sharabiha. They're drinking from the wonderful drinks over there. And in addition to that, wa yatazawaruna fiha. One of the special ladha and pleasures of paradise is the idea that we're able to visit one another, to see one another, to visit one another. So, a couple of things, these are just kind of reminders about paradise. One of them, that paradise in the barzakh, once you make it there, that's it, the good times are there. It's not the case that somebody, they made it there, but they're still worried. Maybe when I go to the hisab, then I'll face the, no. Once you make it there, the times are good. Number two, they tell us that those who are in a higher station in barzakh will be able to visit those who are in a lower station. But it's not the case that the believers who are in a lower station will be able to visit those who are in a higher station. We were supposed to do that work here. We didn't develop that readiness, that ability, that capacity to enjoy those higher bounties. But we won't know, of course, that there's greater bounties than the ones that we have. What Ayatollah Jawadi Amali says, he says that paradise, he explains, it's not a place of regret, of remembering, I should have done this, I wish I hadn't done that. He said if that was the case, then hur, it would be Jahannam for hur. Right? The person who stopped Imam Hussein to always, every time I look in the face of Imam Hussein, to remember all of the terrible things that I did. And if only I had, right, that would be torture. So he says that we don't remember those things. So the people who are in the lower levels of paradise, they don't know. They're not saying, oh, I just wish if only I had done those extra prayers, extra fasting, if I had been kinder. They're just sitting and they're enjoying it. And also, of course, it never gets boring. It's not the case that we say after a while, well, come on, I mean, how much food, how much drink? Not the case. Over there in paradise, it never gets boring. It never is the same for us. Now, a couple of things that they mentioned for us. One of the things that's mentioned in the hadith is that in addition to the regular things we do, we also, so we're in our rooms in paradise, those gardens, enjoying ourselves, but we also have a special joy that we experience. And that special joy, brothers and sisters, is a place called Wadi Salam. What we're going to do is we're going to learn a little bit about that place, another one of the pleasures of paradise. In addition to all the joys that we're experiencing, there's a special one of a general gathering, if you like, where we're all able to see the other believers, and that's in Wadi Salam, the barzakh, not Wadi Salam, which is over there in Kufa, but rather the barzakh of that, or another realm. In the barzakh, you'll inshallah look at some of the ahadith where the Imam is saying it's part of that paradise. Anyhow, one of the companions of the Imam is explaining this reality. So he says that I was walking with the Imam. We came outside of Kufa. We went over to this open area, Wadi Salam, and he said the Imam stood and started speaking. It was as if he was addressing a group of people. كَأَنَّهُ مُخَاطِبٌ لِأَقْوَامٍ, as if he was addressing someone. And the guy who was there said the Imam was standing. At first, I was standing as well. The Imam stood for so long, I got exhausted. I sat down. And the Imam's still there, and he's still speaking. And he said, I got bored of sitting. I stood up. Then I got tired. I sat. Finally, what happened? He said, I took my cloak, and I went to the Imam, and I said, I'm worried about you. You've been standing so long. Do you want to rest a little bit? I spread the cloak on the ground for the Imam. And then the Imam said something very interesting to me. He told me that my purpose here is nothing other than to speak to the believers and to be company for the believers. And the guy, he found that a little bit strange. He was like, because he didn't see anybody. He said, the Imam was speaking, he's addressing, it's as if people are here, but I don't see anyone. He said, this is really the case? And the Imam told him this in Arabic. He says, Naam, yes. لو كشف لك if the veil was removed for you, you would see the believers sitting in circles here, speaking. They were addressing one another. So the Imam said, are they arwah? Are they spirits, or are they actually physical bodies? And then the Imam explained that they're arwah, they're souls, those barzakhi bodies. He says that wherever there's a believer, wherever they are, wherever they die on the face of the earth, they're sent. They join the other believers. The soul is told to go to Wadi as-Salam. And then he says this, وَإِنَّهَا لَبُقْعَةٌ مِنْ جَنَّةِ عَدْنٍ. It's a place or a part of that celestial, everlasting paradise. It's a barzakhi place. So what takes place over there? A couple of just quick pointers to see that take place. One is, based on the ahadith, we go there every evening. We get a chance to visit every single evening. Number two, we enjoy the fruits and blessings and things that are over there. We enjoy those. We get a chance, number three, we get a chance to meet, speak, talk. And this always takes place until Fajr. So in the evening until Fajr. After that, then we go back to our heavenly abodes in the barzakh. And although it's not explained to us exactly what happens in the hadith, we have to put them together to kind of get a picture of what takes place over there. It seems to be connected to ziyarah of Amirul Mu'mineen and benefiting from the Imam. Something to do with the wilayah of the Ahlul Bayt and Amirul Mu'mineen. So I'll mention a story that's really nice. There was one of you may have heard this, that it's makruh for us to visit the graves at night. The souls leave at night, they go to Wadi as-Salam, they come back at Fajr. It's makruh to visit the graves at night. So one of our shuhada, his mother actually had this habit of going and visiting him. He would go and visit her son, and she would visit him at night. Until once she had a true dream. In her dream, she said she saw the other shuhada, and they were all preparing to go somewhere. So she asked them, where are you going? And my son, she says, my son answered. She said, Mommy, they're all going to visit Amirul Mu'mineen. So she asked, she said, well, why aren't you going? He said, Mommy, I have a guest. You're my guest. Out of respect for you, I'm going to be here. She woke up from the dream, and when she woke up from the dream, she changed her method. Meaning from then on, she would go to visit her son, would come Asr time, she would leave. And people asked, they said, well, you used to go over visit your son first. Hey, you're always there at the evening. She said that I don't want my son to be denied doing ziyarah of Amirul Mu'mineen because of my presence. So that's one of the treats that we get over there. For the kuffar, there's another wadi, Barahut. And over there, in addition to the regular torment that they get as a reaction to their sins, because we already explained that the actions take on a corporal form, over there is a little extra taste for the kuffar and their wadi. That's what they have in addition. Now, next question. How long are people in the grave? What's it like to be over there in the grave? This is also another interesting thing that we find in the hadith, that once Imam Ali was with his companions, and then he asked them, he said, do you guys want to see something that's amazing, something wondrous? They said, yeah, why not? We'd love to. Amirul Mu'mineen. So the Imam went over, and they said we were with the Imam, and he went to a grave, and when we looked at the grave, you could tell that this grave, the person was buried there a long time ago. You could see it was apparent. The Imam told the person in the grave to come out of the grave by the permission of Allah. That person came out of the grave. They said when he came out of the grave, he had white hair. And then the Imam started to ask him some questions. He said, how long have you been here? How many years has it been? And the man said, after reading the Imam, he said that actually it hasn't been years. He said, well, how many months? He said, it hasn't been months. He said, days. He said, it hasn't even been a day yet. So haven't even been a day yet. So what happened? The man starts explaining. He said that actually what happened was when I died, the angels came, Nakir and Munkar. They had questions. I answered those questions, and then the good times began. I had company. The beautiful forms were there. He said one of the Hurul Ain was there. He said, I've just been sitting there enjoying myself until, of course, you summoned me. At this stage, then the Imam prayed for the man, and the man went back to his grave. Then he told us, the companions, he said, this man has been in his grave for 100 years. But for him, he's not even aware. The time flies when you're having fun. For him, has it been a day? The Imam didn't stop there, though, with the practical lesson. He took us to another grave. This grave, it was evident this guy had literally just been buried. When we went over to that grave, again, the Imam told him to come out with the permission of Allah. This guy was in bad shape, though, when he came out. And then the Imam started to ask him the same questions. How long have you been here? Has it been days? Has it been weeks? Has it been years? The guy was like, it's as if it's been 100 years. They say the Imam prayed for him. The man went back. That man had just been buried. So the time in the grave for those who haven't done the right thing, yeah, it seems, and it is an eternity. For those who are enjoying themselves, of course. Another one is the idea of another one of the pleasures of being in the grave. It's the question, we find this answer from the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt. Are we allowed to visit our families after we've been buried? After we've been buried, what happens? Are we aware of what happens with them? Are we allowed to visit them? Is that part of the deal? Or no, we're in our graves. What we find is that some of our great ulama, it wasn't just, I'm going to mention the hadith that talks about it and then at what stages, how. I'll mention, inshallah, the hadith of Ahlul Bayt. But with some of our ulama, they were actually aware of what was happening with their families. Not just that they were visiting them, and I'll mention the hadith that'll happen to regular mu'mineen. Some of the individuals, when they died, they were absolutely aware of what was going on with their families. We've all read and we've all benefited from Mafatihul Janah. The son of the person who wrote Mafatihul Janah, he also was a very special man, a very good friend of Shaheed Mutahari. This individual is someone who's very special, and there's stories that they tell about him. One of the stories is this, that this was, again, he's passed away, obviously, he's passed away. This was in the time of the Taghut, so before the revolution had become victorious. He was going through extreme financial difficulty. As a housing student, he was a housing student, the son of a great alim, going through extreme financial difficulty. He said, where finally it got to the stage where I considered taking up a regular job in addition to my house studies. But this was in the time of the Taghut. It was going to be a minor job. He was going to serve as a clerk. But for him, at that stage, son of that alim, it wasn't appropriate. It just crossed my mind because of not that I'm saying this, he was thinking about doing something haram, but it wasn't appropriate. He said that this crossed my mind, and I didn't tell anybody. I went to sleep. I saw my father in my dream. My father was furious. And my father, he said that you don't think very much of Imam Hussein, do you? You don't think Imam Hussein is looking out for you? And he said, in my dream, my father reached into his pocket and he gave me some money. He said that what happened was I woke up. So I wake up now, it's before the time of Fajr, and I see somebody's knocking at the door. Over, answer the door. After he prayed, so he prayed Fajr. After Fajr, somebody's knocking at the door. Somebody's there, I don't recognize them. Salam, alaikum assalam, who are you, this, that, and the other. And then the guy says, here, take this money from your father. Your father said this. He said, from then on, I didn't face these kind of financial difficulties. So sometimes, for those very, very special people, they're aware of what's happening. I remember this story from Shahid Ibrahim Hadi. Remember Shahid Ibrahim Hadi? Alhamdulillah, we had a chance to kind of cover his life story a little bit over the course of some of the lecture series. His father also was a great man of taqwa. And in that story, Salam on Ibrahim, over there he tells a story. Remember, his father passed when he was very young. And like some individuals, he says, actually, I was upset with Allah. From a very religious family. But why did I have to lose my father? In my heart of hearts, I was upset. He said, after we had everybody came to offer their condolences, when everybody left, I went to bed without offering salah. So Maghrib time, for instance, but I go to bed without angry at God. He said that when I fell asleep, I saw my father come in, open the door, come right over to me, and he's standing at me and he's staring at me. He said, I learned a lot of things just from the staring of my father. I woke right up, and it wasn't, alhamdulillah, the time for salah hadn't passed, and he went over and he offered his prayer. So again, some of the mu'mineen, special mu'mineen, they're aware of their families at that. What I would like to share is a little bit of what we actually find in the ahadith. So the ahadith tell us, and there's many ahadith about it, but one of the ahadith tells us this, that we believers will definitely be able to visit our families. Imam Sadiq says this, Innal mu'min la yazuru ahlahu. Definitely, a believer after death, they're going to be able to visit their family. He says, for the believer though, the believers in the paradise, Barzakhi paradise, God shows the believer, meaning he will see that which he loves, and Allah will hide the things that the believer doesn't love. So the person's visiting their family, the family are doing different things, but the things that they love to see, Allah will allow them to see that because they're in the paradise. With the kuffar, the Imam says it's the opposite. He also visits his family, but he sees those things that he hates, and the things that he loves are hidden from him. The Imam explains, he says that minhum, amongst the believers, man yazuru kullu jumu'atin. There's some of the believers once a week. They come Friday, they're able to go, for instance, kullu jumu'at. And others, they're able to visit based on how much amal they did in this world. Again, that reminder of Ahlul Bayt, to work while we're here. What we learn from some of the ahadith is this. There's some people who are able to visit more, but at the very least, the believer is allowed to visit once per week. The believer is able to fly over to see the family. It takes place at midday. That visit of the believer takes place at midday. If the believer sees that his family members are doing good deeds, the believer rejoices. Alhamdulillah. The kafir, they don't see the mistakes of the family, they see the good deeds. So they praise Allah for that, the believer. The kafir, on the other hand, when they see their family doing good deeds, they're full of regret. So God shows them that. Now what happens is you find that also some of our ulama, in addition to this, they were actually able to see the dead while they were alive. Some of the ulama were able to see the dead while they were alive. So the dead would visit, but the alim would be at such a level, such a spiritual status, that he would actually be able to see the dead. So this story is about one of the grand ayatollahs, whose name you've heard before. I've mentioned him before. Ayatollah al-Uzma Sayyid Jamal Gulpaigani. Once his son tells a story. He says that my father told me, so this is like just after or just around the time of the Fajr prayer, he said, go check on such and such alim. Go check on his family. So, but the son says, but this Ayatollah, but he was healthy. He said, no, I want you to go over and I want you to check. He says that I go over there to check, and when I go to check, I see that actually his family is weeping, crying. They lost the Ayatollah. He had had a stroke. He went to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I came back, I asked my father about it. Well, I said, yes, it's true. Something had happened. He had had a stroke. But how did you know? And that Ayatollah said that Ayatollah Diya Iraqi, another one of the greats who had died, he came to me from the barzakh. And he said that I'm about to attend the janazah for the other Ayatollah. And it was from there that I understood. So there are some people who are at that stage. The last thing I'm going to say for today, and then inshallah we'll be ending a little bit early today, inshallah, is just a tiny reminder about the shuhada. So I remember sharing with brothers and sisters that there are certain things that make the shuhada special. Other people are good, but the shuhada are something else. One of them is their station in the hereafter. We haven't even gotten to what happens on Yawm al-Qiyamah and these things. What happens to them in the next life, in the barzakh? A very interesting point that you'll find based on the ayat of the Quran. So, one of the ayat of the Quran that talks about our shuhada is this one, Surah 3, verse number 169. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا. Don't consider those who are slain in the way of Allah to be dead. Now, there's a point here that the scholars raise. They say, well, the Muslims in general, the belief of the believers wasn't that when you die, you turn into dust. They knew, we all knew, that nobody's dead. If you remember in the battle, even the battle of Badr, the Prophet would gather the enemies and he would tell the enemies, he'd be addressing them and talking to them. And some people did question, and what is that? No, they can hear better than you. So nobody assumes that when you're dead, you turn into dust. But here you find that Allah is talking about our shuhada in this way, that don't consider them amwat, bal ahya'un. They're alive. And the reality is everybody's alive. Why single them out in this way? What they tell us is this is because the level of life that they're experiencing is so grand, it's as if only they're alive. All the rest of it, we've already covered the hadith, we're eating, we're enjoying. That's nothing compared to what Allah gives those who give everything they have in the way of Allah. فَرِحِينَ بِمَا أَتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ. They are rejoicing with that which Allah has given them. So they have no fear of the barzakh, no fear of the grave, no fear of resurrection, and absolutely no fear of qiyamah. Inshallah, Allah allow us to continue in the way of those greats and help us to spread Islam as is and to spend our time practicing Islam and taking advantage of this opportunity, this precious gift that Allah has given us called life, so that we're able to experience those joys in the next world. We end with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you again, Sheikh, and inshallah, please keep an eye on our social media, inshallah, for upcoming programs about the Night of Power and the Shahadat of Imam Ali next weekend. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقعتها كاذبة خافضة رافعة. إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة
فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما وأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين في سدر مخضود وطلح منضود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة